Hey y'all, it's your girl Mrs. D Green here. It is Sunday, April 13th, and I hope you all are having a fabulous Sunday or whatever day of the week you are watching this. Before we get into what we are here to do, please don't forget to hit that notification bell, comment, and share. Trying to get her out here on this algorithm, as I always say. It's good to be back. I just got back from New York. I took my daughter to New York for her spring break because I love the city. If I haven't mentioned this before, I think I mentioned it in the last chapter that we covered, which was chapter 10 that we were preparing for the trip. Went on the trip. It was so nice. It was so nice. She got to experience have that New York experience like her mother does. She went to go see Wicked. Well, I took her to go see Wicked, and I ended up getting her an autograph poster from the cast, and she got so emotional she cried. She was like, "Mom, I'm crying tears of joy," and I was like, "Yes, proud mama moment." That's what I do it for. I do it for enriching my daughter's life. That's what I'm out here hustling and bustling for. But I'm also hustling for myself. I got to take care of my health, mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally, all of that. But she got to have a great experience. She also went to the M&M store, which, you got to go to the M&M store. And then when I go, this is what I do when I go. I always hit a Broadway show. I go to a museum, or I do something touristy. I have dinner on the water by way of their boats. They have like lunch, dinner specials and stuff at the Chelsea Pier. And so that's what I did for her. So I took her on a lunch special on Friday, and then she decided that she wanted to go to the Museum of Ice Cream, and she enjoyed herself. I enjoyed myself too. It was pretty cute. Nice little concept. But anywho, that's not why we're here. While we will be discussing New York briefly in tonight's review and recap of chapters 11 and 12, the last two chapters of The Urgent Life by our girl Bozoma St. John, who I believe they're on, I think it's the third part coming up for the reunion. And, from what I've heard, because I haven't watched it, I did watch the first one. I watched the first episode. And, from what I've heard, Bozoma is rallying up people because, she didn't stand in solidarity. But if you care to know where I stand on that, go ahead and go to my pop culture playlist and you will hear my rant, because I just think it's ridiculous to hold someone or expect to hold someone to a standard that is not fair across the board. So I'll just say that. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it, right? So, got my notes here. I'm mixing them up. So chapter 11 is called Sugar Man Gone. Now, this, I believe, okay, so while she was jumping around different time periods, she does, but I forget, or if I'm not mistaken, yes, this is at the time where it's nearing Peter's death. So she's not going back to like a childhood experience or, her college days. This is in the time during Peter's succumbing to his disease. So she said that the time came to tell Lael, and, she didn't know how to say that to a 4-year-old because Lael was 4 at the time. So she reached out to a friend of hers who happened to be a child psychologist, and the friend told her to not say that Peter was sick because she did not want Lael to associate whenever someone got sick to death, because becoming sick is something normal. You get sick with the cold, you get sick with the flu, you get sick with measles, etc. So she didn't want Lael to associate being sick with death. So she said the best way to tell her was just to simply tell her that he was dying. He was dying because he had a disease, and be specific about the disease. And I actually agree with that because it's just me and my daughter now. As you guys know, I relate to Bowles because I'm also a widow. And ever since it's been me and her, I don't sugarcoat anything. I don't. Like, even his death and, how I felt about it. Because there came a time where my daughter got really, 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 really sad. And I just told her straight up, like, you know what? Your dad wouldn't want us to be sad. He made his choice to have a motorcycle, right? He was happy with his choice. Unfortunately, his choice is what caused this to happen, but we're not going to sit here and be sad about it all the time. He wouldn't want us to be sad because he wasn't sad. He was probably in a happy, space, because he would say it was wind therapy. So he probably was in a happy space, leading up into the moment. But yeah, I agree with that approach. I feel like that was some really good advice. Obviously coming from a child psychologist. Then she speaks about the reconciliation. So they decided to get back together, given the fact that Peter was dying, but Angela was still in the picture. So she says that once they decided, now this is after they had gotten Angela out of the picture, but she mentions this because it did kind of like teeter between periods or whatever. So she says that it was ironic and she was kind of upset that grief and loss was something that separated them in the first place, and it was also something that was bringing them back. Because remember, when Eve passed away, that's what kind of put that pressure on their relationship. And then with Peter not having much time left, it's what's bringing them together. So she saw the irony in that and was kind of angry that they had lost time, given that they were coming back together due to grief and loss. So yeah, it's and she says something really beautiful about Peter. I'll get to that in chapter 12, which that's why she decided to live urgently behind that experience she had with Peter. So we'll get to that. But Angela, so this is a time where they're at the hospital, right? And everyone was in the room, and Bowles was, I guess, getting overwhelmed with like just something going on. I forget what was happening, but Lael was missing. So she started panicking and couldn't find her. And then when she went looking for her, everyone, because everyone's family, they didn't think anything of it. Lael is there, so, or with someone, whether it be a staff member or a family member or something. So no one was panicking like Bowles. Bowles goes to the elevator and she sees Lael and Angela getting off the elevator. And she says she flipped the fuck out. She's like, why do you have her? What are you doing with her? And then Lael was, crying. And then Angela started looking sad. And what it was that because they had now been given the news that Peter's disease was terminal, Bowles realized all the pressure and the stress and the preparation, the planning, what her life was going to be like, it overwhelmed her. So the fact that Angela was now, while she was supportive, now that it's terminal, Angela is kind of in the way. And so Angela just annoyed the shit out of her when she saw her, and she told her, don't you ever, take her out of my sight anymore. But what she did after that was she went to Peter and she told Peter, you know what, if this is terminal, I don't want to share the last few days with her. This is awkward. If we're gonna be reconciled, we need to be reconciled as a family, and we don't need basically her hanging along in the end of days. And I was like, I have not been in that position. Now that is one thing I can't relate to her on, because my husband was abruptly taken. So the decision making, and there was no emotional rearranging or making room for anyone else. I didn't have someone that I had to partner with. Now, he does have a child from a previous marriage, so her and I talked after that, but when he left, it was just me left to deal with it. So I kind of understand both. She's like, look, we already lost enough time. I'll be damned if I'm going to share my last few days with this lady. Kind of unfair to Angela, because Angela did get emotionally invested, and it is her man that's dying. Her man that's dying, not Bowles' husband, but that's something. But Bowles did say she looks back on that and she did feel bad because emotionally she couldn't imagine being in Angela's shoes, to watch someone that you love die, and then the wife just kind of comes in and pushes you out of the way. In fact, she said Angela once she talked to Peter about it, because Peter still loved Bowles. He did not push back on that. He literally ended it with Angela as soon as she requested it. And Angela, I guess, was texting her, ripped her a new one, and vice versa. There was a nasty exchange of words, and yeah, Bose looks back on that like, you know, that's probably the only thing I would maybe modify, but not really. And you know what, I agree with her on that. I'm sorry, it's not fair, but if we're gonna finish off these last few days as a family, we don't need a fourth family member. We don't. If we want that, we can get a dog. All right, so she says that she would wake up and she would down talk to God or something, she said to that effect. But she would have moments of happiness. Oh, that's what it was. She would doubt it because she would try to have moments of happiness, but because of what was going on, she doubted that happiness was authentic. So she kind of had this like, back and forth, this warfare with God, because she's like, if God was, so forgiving, or such a good God, why would he be putting me through this? And so she says she also wondered, and I was like, I get that. That's, again, this is you're gonna go through a slew of emotions, so they're not always gonna make sense to people who don't understand it or go through it themselves. But she said that because she knew she wasn't happy with Peter, and that's why they separated. Now she did have that happiness because she didn't have that many days left with him, but then she wondered sometimes, if he were to get better, would she still be happy with him? And I was like, that's gotta be difficult to wrestle with that. But she stated something on a page, and I did highlight it. And oh yeah, this was it. So this is on page 227. She says that it had been a while since she had been alone, and she filled the silence with that pesky eternal question. Why? Why was this happening to me? How could I lose someone else? Because she had lost Ben, and then she lost Eve, and then, she lost grandmother. So she's, she was just tired of loss. And she said her questions were more of a mental refrain than a direct query to God, but God still answered because it was dead silent, and she knew it was God because it was silent. And she said the voice inside of her, or the voice that was of God, is because you didn't appreciate them. Oh, and she said she knew it was God because it was a truth that she didn't want to face. She knew it was God because the voice filled the apartment like surround sound streaming from a giant speaker. She said she collapsed to her knees because she knew that it was about Ben. She knew that it was about Eve. She knew that it was about Peter. I hadn't appreciated enough being Ben's love, being Eve's mother, being Peter's wife. My gratitude for them deepened only when they were gone or on the verge of being taken. Man, I felt her on that, because I'll be honest with you, I'll just be so candid. I loved my husband. I did, but the last 3 years before his death, I had kind of fallen out of love because we had already been going through so much stress, right? And then I don't want to taint his name, but he had did something to break our trust. And he had did this actually in 2017. I did not find out until 2020, and it violated me on the most deepest level. And the way I found out about it, it wasn't through him. It was through someone else. And when I asked him about it, when that person brought it up out of anger, because it was Mad Day, he tried to hide it, and that like double stabbed me, because it's like, not only are you caught, but you're gonna double down and lie. So yeah, and I didn't appreciate him before he died. It wasn't until I got in this relationship that I just got out of, and this person was a complete opposite of my late husband. This person was entitled. They had a lot of demons they hadn't worked out, and they just did not have the tools to properly love anyone. And in that relationship is when I grieved and mourned and appreciated my late husband. So when she said that, I was like, yeah, I mean, that's that's a harsh truth to reckon with, but you know what? Don't be in denial. Like, be honest with yourself. That's how you grow. Even if it's an ugly truth about yourself, that's how you grow, you know? Yeah, it's hard to hear you didn't appreciate someone and you didn't appreciate them until they died, but at least you can make peace and make corrections and now value people when they come into your life. And that is exactly me. So, all right. So, she says there were only 2 more sections I highlighted on 228 and 229. Let me read them because there was a reason why I highlighted them. She says, that morning when God spoke to me in my apartment, I knew I had to focus. So she got used to waking up in the mornings because I guess that's when she felt like she had her closest, time with God, and she took advantage of that. She said, whatever doubts I had about my marriage, I resolved to ignore them, to not let them obscure the lesson that was coming into view. Faced with the truth that I'd lacked appreciation, I staggered to my feet, understanding that from now on, the only way I can live my life was with full gratitude. And you do. You do. I owe that to Peter and God. I owe that to myself. I would no longer take anything for granted, not a love, not a moment. From then on, I would live every day of my life with urgency. I vowed to actively demonstrate my thanks for every breath, not with a passing thought or a glib remark that I didn't mean. My gratitude was going to be intentional. I didn't want to gaze at the light as it began to dim. I wanted to cherish it all along the way. And yeah, you do. Like I said, in my last relationship, I was super intentional. That's why it hurt that I had to break it off because, like I said, I realized he was very damaged and I'm not about struggle love. It doesn't matter if I'm intentional and I see the good in you. I see that I want to love you. I have to love myself. So I'm not going to stick around and waste my time being miserable in love if you don't want to do the work. So just as intentional as I got in that relationship, I got out of it. And then I intentionally redirected my love to me and started dating myself again and loving myself. So I got back on my fitness journey. I was always a good mother, but it's like 10 times more because now I'm better to myself. And my daughter sees that. So it's like even with that, you have to like make those moments count. You just never know when they can be taken away from you. You don't. So I know there's a lot of you that'll probably stumble across this where you have lost someone and you have the same sentiment. That's just one of those things we don't really talk about in a positive way, because death, depending on your point of view, some people look at it as a sad thing. And it is sad, to have someone in your life and then boom, they're taken away. That's a sad thing. However, point of view and perspective is everything. And that's what she means by gratitude. I now appreciate that I was able to have a love like my husband. I was able to, have someone in my life that was so devoted to me, that taught me love. He taught me love because I didn't have a father in the home. I didn't have a father, and the father I do have, he was not the best person to women. And the men that I grew up around were not the best to women. So that man, instead of looking at it like, oh my God, I'm so mad it got taken away, I have gratitude for having had it. So perspective and point of view is everything. And it could save you. It could save you even after devastation. So that's why now I live to the fullest. I'm taking the trips. I'm exposing myself to opportunities. In fact, there's a project that I just got selected for that I will be discussing. There will be an exhibit in September that I will be a part of, and I will be sure to share that with you. But yes, I'm going to the concerts, I'm just doing what I gotta do, taking the chances and living life, because you just never know. It's about the width, right? Not just the length. But let's get back on the book. All right. So, I made notes on that she began to have gratitude for it all, good and bad. And she began to cherish every moment in its detail. Every moment in its detail. Peter was like that too. So this is during the time where they've reconciled and now they're, checking things off the list and living life, the life that they have left together. She says that Peter wanted to take Lael fishing, even, feeling sick. She felt nervous about letting him do it because his body wasn't in the best, and she just didn't know how that would pan out. But she knew it meant a lot to him to have that private moment with Lael. So, you know, instead of how she was with Lael when Lael was first born, you know how they were kind of competing to she let Peter have it, you know, because it's like life is literally short for him. You know, he only had 6 months at this point. She said that Peter loved gelato, so he would, you know, savor every bite of gelato that he could, even if it was a struggle for him to eat it. She said that Peter took her on a picnic and he proposed again. Got on his knee, you know, weak and all, and she's like, she accepted. But she said, we're already married. And he said, I know, but this is like our second win, so I want to make sure I do it right. He loved her so much. Loved her so much. She says that after the proposal, they kind of relived their wedding. So it was like, okay, I got proposed to, now let's do the wedding again. So they sat and watched the video, but this time they sat and watched it with Lael and the family. And Lael got to see her mom and dad get married, which I thought was sweet. Now this is when things started going more downhill. So she said Peter, his body started to shut down. In fact, on Lael's first day of school, because she had started like a private school, they were walking her. In fact, she has a picture of it too. I'm going to show it at the end of the recap. But they were walking her, and Peter got too weak, and she could tell. And you know, she told him, "Let me carry. I'll take over from here." But before she did that, she made sure to snap a photo with him and her walking Lael. And she says that, this is when it got worse. So Thanksgiving morning, she says she noticed Peter had a bruise on his eye, and she didn't say anything because she didn't want to alarm him, and it was the holiday. But she called the oncologist to let the oncologist know, because the oncologist had told her to look for certain bruising, because that would indicate that there may be internal bleeding. So the oncologist told them to come in that day. Peter did not want to. He did not want to go. But, you know, Bose, she insisted because she just wanted to make sure he was okay. They actually spent Thanksgiving in the hospital. And, you know, she said she fed him as much as she could. And the complications furthered. And she said that his voice was so small, but his complaints were so big because, you know, he started becoming more weak and I don't want to say feeble, but he started becoming more weak, and she just was watching him deteriorate before her eyes, and it just got harder. She says that he wanted to get out, of course, but the disease kept attacking his body. And then it started to attack his nervous system. And, you know, he got to a point where he couldn't feel certain things in his body. He actually couldn't feel his own. If you push out to poop, he could not feel that. So everything was starting to become numb, and he feared paralysis. And so did she, because he said something like, well, what if I'm, you know, I can't speak to you. I fear, like, what if something's going on with me? Sorry, my hair is throwing me off. And I can't share what's going on. And she said, that's got to be a miserable. She said she thought to herself, that's got to be miserable. It's like you're alive, but kind of, you know, you're dead, because if no one can hear you or you can't speak on what you're feeling, then that's got to be a miserable way to die. And it just, this part, it was like, I'm gonna put a trigger warning too, because I'm describing, you know, I'm trying to describe, as she described a little bit more in detail. I'm summarizing her description, just like down to the letter, what they were dealing with and how Peter's body was shutting down. Like, I have not seen that. I have not. I will admit that. So, like, even when my husband was taken to the mortuary, or the morgue, I didn't even view his body. I told the director, I said, I want to remember him the way he left the house. So like to watch someone dying slowly, like my heart goes out to any of you that have had to go through that. It takes a hell of a hell of strength, because that memory of them is always going to be etched in your mind, you know. So I salute you, because as she was describing it, I was like, I could not fucking imagine. I couldn't imagine. And then you got to wrap your head back around so that you can function for your daughter. Like, I couldn't imagine. All right, so she said that his parents and her, they kind of took turns or whatever. She said when she would be in the hospital, she found solace in reading, and she remembered reading a passage of something. I don't recall if she said it was like a book or whatever, but she says she's remember reading something about death where they said right before, if someone is dying, right before they die, they get like this second wind. They feel better. They feel stronger, and sure enough, the day it happened, she said that Peter did feel stronger, and he had asked her to call all of his friends, but call them in one by one. He wanted to meet with them one by one. So everyone came in one by one. As it got worse, though, his best friend's name was Scott, and his Scott's mother's name was Deborah. So those were two of the people that stayed behind and, you know, stayed a little longer and sat with Peter. And I guess it became too much for Scott that he had to leave, so he left, and then Deborah followed shortly after. And Bo says she remembers getting upset with them because they didn't stick to it, through it with them till the end. Sorry, and she had to stay there, you know, because she's his wife, but because she was committed to him. That was a childhood friend, did not understand why they could not be committed to him to the end. So I mean, I get it. Again, you're going through a slew of emotions, so some of that stuff might be displaced, but, you know, I get it nonetheless. I get it. It's tough. It's tough. So, she said that Peter began to drift away moment by moment later on in that day, and, you know, she was feeling a little uneasy, but she ended up falling asleep. She said she had a fitful sleep, so it wasn't a comforting sleep. In fact, she actually woke up at 4 a.m. sharp. And she said that she remembers, like, you know, thinking death would be dramatic like how it's been portrayed in television shows. But no, Peter just slipped away. When she woke up, you know, the monitors started going crazy, and she called the staff in, and before you knew it, the doctor pronounced his death at 4:44 that morning on December 11th, 2013. She said that the moments after that, there was a stillness. There was a stillness in her, and, you know, there was a stillness leading up to that, but then as soon as it happened, everything like moved so fast. So she said she felt like they were rushed out of the hospital after being there for a couple of weeks, because he had checked in on Thanksgiving. Remember, checked in on Thanksgiving. So she felt like they were rushing them out, and it was like, what the hell, you know? She says her and the family, when they got in the car, she turned on the radio, and By Your Side was playing on the radio. And she says everyone in the car broke down, even her, but she took that as, okay, in my weakest moments, Peter will show up, because, you know, that was their wedding song. So in a way, that was Peter, you know, kind of looking out for her right after he had passed away. Guys, this was a lot. This was a lot, because you're going through the motions with her leading up to it. You are, and especially dealing with a young child, it's tough. It's tough. Leo was so young. So on one hand, the memories, she doesn't really have that many of her dad, but I'm telling you, it will hit her here and there in those milestone moments. And she mentions that in chapter 12, which is what we're about to talk about now. So the name of chapter 12 is Signs. Now, she says she recalls a time that she saw her grandfather's spirit in the front yard when she was, I think she said like 4 or 5. She said she didn't know it was her grandfather. She thought it was, and it scared the crap out of her. So she ran in the house, and she said that her and Peter actually shared an experience like that, because Peter said that he had saw his grandfather's spirit in the church at the grandfather's funeral. So Bowles said how she knew it was her grandfather, because she didn't have really a good memory of him. There weren't that many pictures, but the family had taken a trip back to Ghana, and she saw the photo of the person she saw in the front yard. So she said that her and Peter would talk to people about their shared experience, and they would look at them like they were crazy, but that's how she knew that they had something special, because only they, at least amongst their group of people they knew, friends and family, had had an experience like that no one else had. So I thought that was, I was like, okay, that's cool. Now, Lael wasn't at the hospital when Peter passed away. So she said, you know, the day that they got back home, she didn't tell Lael right away. She didn't. She said Lael actually had some events coming up, and this was around the Christmas holiday. So Lael had a pageant, something that she was performing in, and she didn't want to, you know, dampen her day. So she got dressed up in a glittery outfit, fixed her hair and her makeup, and just went to the pageant, her and the family, as if nothing had happened. And I mean, I understand that, you know, I understand that, especially if it's like the day of something important for Lael. She doesn't want to have that memory associated with that. Mine was a little different. It was different. It was June 19th, so it was Juneteenth, which to my daughter didn't really mean much, but it meant something to me. And it was the day after Father's Day, though. It was the day after Father's Day, so I was thankful that she got to have, you know, a Father's Day with her dad before he passed away. And it was summer, so she was out of school. She was playing in the backyard, swinging on her swing set. And, you know, the cops came to the house to tell us. And I just remember, like, them telling me, and I was like, no, like, shocked, like, in denial. And I just went into this stage of, like, the state of frenzy, and just, like, I called my job, I called his Mason brothers, and then I called my daughter in, because I was like, damn, it's just me and her now. It's fucking just me and her. So I called her in, and I told her, and my daughter, she's such a little soldier, my little queen in the making. She said, no, you know, and I'm sorry, y'all, reading these last 2 chapters, it just takes me down. I'm kind of reliving it, because, like, they were emotional when she's talking about it. But I don't want to make this about me and get on a soapbox. I do apologize. But you all know I relate to Bozoma. So let me get back to it. So she said that she put it off as long as she could. So she put it off for as long as she could. And then one day she was giving Lael a bath. And Lael, sorry, my armpit's itching. One day she was giving Lael a bath, and then after the bath, Lael just randomly asked her, where's daddy? Because she had been home for a couple days, and, you know, okay, well, how come dad's not back? And she said that she remembered what the psychologist said, and she said, dad's gone. She just came out and told her. And Lael just simply replied with, okay. And she says that messed with her, because as innocent as it was, you know, Lael just responding that way, she, as her mother, started thinking, like, yes, that was such a, you know, plain way of accepting it, and it was so to the point. But she started thinking about, like, the moments where Lael would well up. So would Lael well up when she graduated from high school? Would she well up, you know, when she graduated from college, when she got her college acceptance letter? Like, she started thinking about all those moments that she probably would freak out, and she was going to mentally prepare for those moments, given that when she told Lael, it wasn't as dramatic. So I was like, yeah, you do think about that. You do think about that. I remember telling my daughter, because like I said, I had to just be more straight up with her. And so I remember telling her, because he died the summer before she went to 3rd grade. And I told her, I said, you know, kids are cruel. Some kids are probably going to say some mean things to you. They're going to make fun of you if you're, for your dad passing away. And I said, this is what you do. You don't even let it bother you because you've already cried. You've already cried. You cried at the funeral. You cried when you got the news from me. So there's nothing anyone can say to you to break you down behind the death of your father. So, you do have to kind of put that armor on for your kid emotionally, because their life is changed forever when they lose a parent, So I try to pour into her so that she has strength behind it, as silly as that may sound, because now it has pushed her into being able to be strong and accept life how it comes, whether it be good or bad. That life is just not a bubble of positivity all the time. So that was, something that I wasn't looking forward to having to introduce to her at 7, but can't question God's will, right? So anywho, all right, so she said that the day was okay. Yeah, she goes back to the day after Peter had passed away. So she says she had grew a love for China, and this was, through her mother-in-law. Her mother-in-law had introduced her into that whole idea, so she started collecting China for herself. And she said that, when Peter was passing away and she would have to give the medication, she would actually make it this elaborate presentation and present to him his pills, his medication on fine china, so that it didn't make it so daunting. It was a less daunting experience. And she actually kept Peter's pills in China, but the day he passed away, she said that the china just, I don't know, was broken somehow on the counter. She found shattered pieces of it. So she had asked, everyone in the house, because the family was staying with her a little bit after that, what happened? How did who knocked it over? Do you know about this? And no one knew anything. So she says that she had always believed in magic and she believed in a higher power, but she had now, oh God, my thing just went off. I had my diffuser on. She had always believed in, all of that supernatural stuff, but the spiritual world, what she mentioned earlier with her grandfather, she knew without a shadow of a doubt it existed. And she actually thinks that it was Peter saying, no more, and letting her know that he's here. He's here. He will continue to be here. So she said that she recalled when her and Peter would discuss certain things, when he was dying, that Peter said when he passed that he would be able to take care of Eve in heaven and in the afterlife, or heaven, whatever you believe. And she would be left to take care of Lael physically on earth. So, that was, she said that was a good way of looking at it. She was glad that he said that. And she recalls a time where this also substantiated what Peter said, that Peter's brother Neil had a daughter named Giovanna. And she says that Neil told her Giovanna told him he had a dream. And he had a dream about her uncle Peter. She saw her uncle in the dream holding a child standing behind a tree, holding a little girl. And she says that she feels Peter selected Giovanna as the messenger for that, because kids don't lie. They don't lie about stuff like that. And she says that's how she knew Peter was still around, because he was working through different vessels and entities to communicate to her. So that's why he selected Giovanna, because if that would have come from, an adult or whatever, you're going to question because as we grow older, we become more jaded, right? So you're going to question the messenger coming from an adult, but not from a child. And yeah. I got goosebumps when I read that one, y'all. I did, because I believe in that stuff. I do. All right. She says that she cremated Peter on his 44th birthday. I believe his 44th birthday was December 15th. And she says that they didn't really have a lot of time to prepared dresses because she wanted her and Lael to wear a certain color scheme because it symbolizes something in her culture. So, you know, she looked around everywhere in Little Senegal, and she had asked a lady to make her 2 dresses in, I think it was red and black were the colors. And she said when she told the seamstress about the colors that she needed, the seamstress looked at her with pity in her face. Like she, you know, felt bad for Bose. And she said she began to hate that. And I understand that because I had just actually made a video on my lessons in life about how I no longer subscribe to that victim mindset. You have to be a victor because we're all meant to suffer as a result of sin, as a result of the human condition. So I totally get what Bose meant by that. It's like, look, it's going to be it's a part of my story. It's not my main story. So I don't need anyone to feel pity for me. You know, I'd rather you not, because I've gotten to get some things out of this that are actually beneficial to me. She actually says that had Peter not passed away, she probably wouldn't have become who she is today. And, you know, that's finding gratitude in it. Yes, it's at the cost of your husband, but that was God's choice. So, you know, what are you going to do? Be sad and solemn about it and self-destruct? Or are you going to pull strength from within, because you know you're always going to be broken behind it? You got to pull strength from within and keep going. So I totally understood her when she said she does not like pity, because I don't. I still get uncomfortable when people say I'm sorry for your loss. And I'm like, I am too, but you know, life is what it is. All right, so she says that the priest that eulogized Eve, just to, you know, respect the tradition, because that was a Catholic church that Peter went to. She had the ceremony there, but she never went back to that church after that. She says that over 200 people came, and they were kind of, it was like a mix of people, like people that didn't have a lot of things in common other than Peter. So Peter touched a lot of people. And that was the same with my late husband. Now, that's why I'm like, oh my God, we married like the same guy, essentially. My guy was, he was a colorful young man. He was a Freemason. He was just one of those people that was just very sweet, you know, was an open book, made everyone feel loved and safe. He, when we moved down from California to the South, like I said, he was a Freemason. And so he told me down here politically, there was still a divide. So you had the Black Freemasons that, you know, are affiliated with the Prince George chapters. They kind of segregate. And, you know, and the whites do down here as well. Whereas in California, it was a mix. So he actually met with someone that was the president of a motorcycle club here, the Prince George chapter, and they actually united. They united, and they loved Alex. That was my late husband's name. They loved Alex. They called Alex white chocolate. So when she said that Peter brought all those people together, I was like, yep, that was Alex. Alex had he touched a lot of people. So all right, so she says that there were so many people that they had a receiving line for people to, you know, hug her and pay their respects. And she noticed in the crowd that Angela was there. Angela didn't bother coming to say, you know, goodbye to her in the receiving line. And she was like, okay, I understood that. But I think she regrets not being able to have that proper closure with Angela, because Angela did love Peter. So she said that she put Peter's ashes in an urn next to Eve. So I'm going to correct myself. I remember saying that there was a green necklace that she made, but no, it was an urn. So it was a green urn in the shape of a heart. And so she had that urn at the church, and she stored Peter's urn, his ashes, next to Eve's ashes too. So now this, I was like, I get it. She says Christmas Day, she had to, you know, of course, after the death, she had to figure out how to go on. But Christmas Day was one of the first reminders of, all right, it's real. So she had got Lael a dollhouse for Christmas. And Peter was always the one putting things together. My husband's the same way. She says she remember getting angry and frustrated and overwhelmed because, you know, she got mad. Like, how could Peter leave us like this? How could this happen? I went through that the first crying session we had, where we had to have our first Halloween without him because that was his favorite holiday. My daughter broke down, and I remember being so mad and just listening to her cry and looking up to the ceiling, just like, why, you know? So I totally understood her when she said she got overwhelmed. She said she cursed Peter, and then the next day she knew she needed to get out of New York. So she actually reached out to someone through Facebook Messenger. I think this person's name was Marvita or something, but anywho, she reached out to them randomly on Facebook Messenger, and this person actually said they never checked their Facebook Messenger and something told them to check. So it was destined for her to make this trip. She ended up arranging for them to go to Anguilla, and she says when they went to Anguilla, like she threw everything in a bag and they went the next day, no thought behind it. And she says she knew looking back that she was being protected, because here she is going to a foreign country with no guarding, like no one guarding her, like no one with her protecting her, and she was protected. Nothing happened to her. She says that when she got there, she was expecting to kind of just unwind and unpack everything that just happened, but she ended up just residing to the room for 3 days and didn't come out. And, she didn't shower. People brought her food. She barely ate. And she kind of just, let it all out. And she says, by the grace of God, she was around decent people because they took care of Lael, in lieu of her. This was someone that she knew, not just a random person. And she said this person had a daughter, so she was just thankful that she had a village around her to help her go through the emotions. And yeah. She says that she started to feel guilty because the grief started turning into relief. And she said relief was actually more complicated than grief, because she found herself, having moments of acceptance, happiness, what have you. And she didn't know if that was how she was supposed to feel. And I get that, because I actually had, I remember talking to my therapist, and I told her that, and I still love Alex. I love him now. I've always loved him, but I remember saying how, because we weren't happy, we were estranged. We lived under one roof, but we weren't happy. We hadn't had sex for 3 years. And I told her, I said, I feel relieved now because we both don't have to suffer anymore. We were suffering with each other, and, like I said, he had a full life, so I know he was at peace. And I was just like, I hope that he's now at peace and no longer living in an unhappy situation, because I felt at peace. And that's the ugly stuff, that you're not supposed to say. But I told you, so hopefully you don't judge me. Now, there was a section on page 258 that I highlighted that I wanted to read. So I'm going to read that. Now, it's in relation to those complicated emotions around relief. So she says, maybe those feelings were understandable. I was tired and wrung out. I didn't want Lael and me to be forever known as the fatherless child and the widow. I wanted us to just be us. But feeling that way still seemed like a betrayal of Peter. Or to Peter. So, I get it. That's complicated, because it's like, it's not that you're dismissing the person or, lessening the value that they had in your life. But again, they're gone, and you still have to salvage some sort of quality of life and have gratitude for the life that's remaining. So that's where the complication comes from. You dance around all the time with, should I feel this way, or should I still be sad? You do what works for you. Okay, you do what works for you. That's just the style that works for Bozema and myself. So I get that. Now, this is where it started to change. So she said she started kind of looking around, assessing her life in New York, and was like, you know what? I don't think I want to be in this city anymore, or in this house anymore that is associated with all the tragedies that I have recently underwent. She said that even the job. So, Pepsi took her back after she had been gone, but time had passed and things had happened, so she was even tired of doing that. So she says one day she was at an event that Pepsi hosted, and she happened to bump into, I think his name is Jimmy Iovine, over Beats music. So she had a chance opportunity to discuss an opening with their music department, because this is when, I guess, when Beats was starting to really blow up. So the job, was going to be in LA, and she saw that as her ticket out. So she needed the change and jumped on it. But here's where I was like, oh, Peter had actually updated her resume. So she hadn't worked on her resume, and he stored all of this on the computer. So they asked her, she had practically already had the job, but as a formality or just to have it on record, they had requested a resume from her, and she did not know how to form a resume, and she was stuck, and she didn't have the passcodes to get into Peter's laptop for that particular laptop, I guess, for the resume, because if I'm not mistaken, I do recall her saying that they wrote down passwords. But anywho, tangent. And so she said, she prayed about it because the time was running out for her to provide a resume. She asked the person reaching out to her for the resume if she could just provide a bio instead. And the person told her, yeah, I mean, you're pretty much in, so just send that over. And sure enough, from that point on, once she got that role at Beats, because she was going for an executive role, and wrote her bio, she said God permanently removed that obstacle, and that was all she had to provide. She never had to provide a resume after that. I want to get there. I need to work myself up to that. I am. That's my goal. Is I just want to write a bio. I shouldn't have to give you a resume. What I've accomplished should speak for itself. So I'm gonna get on that, because I was like, kudos to her. And so she said, now that she knew she was going to LA, she now had to prepare to relocate Eve and Peter's ashes to Massachusetts, because that's where she wanted them to finally rest if she were going to be gone. And so she says that, 6 months after his death and preparing to go to LA, her and her friends, they all got into a car. And they were driving from New York to Massachusetts. She says she remembers going into what I think it was a panic attack, the way she described it. And so she says that it got so bad because she felt cramped in the car, they had to pull over to the side of the road. She got out, to catch her breath. A Ford rushed past their car and almost sideswiped her and honked. And she said when she looked up, no lie, the license plate read Pete. So again, that was Pete's way of coming in when she was at her weakest to give her the strength to go on. So she said when she saw that, they got in that car and they were just so dead set on like trying to capture that, because who's going to believe that, right? That they got in that car, hightailed it, followed that car, and took a photo of the license plate. So now it gets into her appreciating the loss, all the losses that she had underwent, the lessons that she got from them. So she says for Ben, she learned that defy boundaries, because Ben didn't box himself in. Yes, he was from Switzerland, but he crossed over into the Black culture seamlessly and had an appreciation for it. So he refused to be boxed in, and so did she. She says from Eve, she learned that love is infinite, because while she never got to grow with Eve, she always thought about Eve, what she would look like, what she would be like. That love never died. And so she says that she, like I said, she didn't know her physically, but forever loved her. And then with Peter, she learned to live life with urgency, because, obviously, right? They didn't have much time to have happiness reinstalled into their marriage. So, she took those last 6 months and lived urgently. And that's how she applies her life today. And I mean, she does. If you look at her, she does not box herself in from anything. That's how she's now on The Housewives, after having a career in marketing. Who goes from corporate to Housewives. She's the first. All right. So, she said that urgency also, because she used to kind of get on herself and associate how she responded to life like her dad. Her dad would kind of just what was the word? Not be reckless, but be impulsive. There we go. But she learned with urgency that it was not reckless, it was intentional. Because what you're doing is you're not just waiting around for things to change. If something comes up, you have to act on it. In fact, she actually has a section that I highlighted in here. Okay. So she says that, like I said, from Peter, I learned to live life with urgency, to take that trip, to call a friend, to cut off that toxic person, not next week, not next year, but as soon as you thought. Don't delay. Don't count on an unpromised future. It is a 9, and knowing that is sobering but also freeing. So she said that still she had regrets though. She wished she stayed at home when Ben rang the phone. She wished she knew instinctively how to nourish Eve, and she wished she knew how to be a better lover to Peter. So that's why her mindset just shifted from living urgently. Like, don't second guess it, you know. And if you have to, you just got to make those difficult decisions. Because even with Peter, Lael had them bonded together, but I honestly think if she did not have Lael, Peter would have been a thing of the past. So, you know, it's like God's trying to teach her to value what you have, but then, you know, treat it well and with urgency. So she says that tragedy taught her resilience, forcing her to dig deep and find a way forward as a single mother raising a child while coping with everlasting sadness. It's helped her redefine success, to know that achievement isn't reaching goals scrawled on a whiteboard, but being able to tell your little girl the hardest of truths. It's fighting for love when it might be simpler to walk away. It's carrying on when hope seems hollow, and deciding to embrace struggle, trusting that the knowledge gained from those travails will buoy you for a lifetime. So yeah, she just learned how to have gratitude for it all, you know, gratitude for it all. And then she wraps it up, chapter 12, with her turning 44 in 2021. So she says she had a little bit of fear around that time because Peter was 44 when he passed away. So, you know, 4 days, like she started being obsessed with the number 4. So 4 days before she turned 44, you know, she was counting down. She says that she would wake up at 4:44 in the morning every morning leading up to her birthday, just, you know, worried. She had actually read somewhere that 4 is the passageway to the spirit world. And she took that as a sign to move forward on anything that you might have felt like you were contemplating or having like difficulty in coming to a decision with. So she says if that number 4 emerged in a time like that, then that was God giving her answer on how to proceed with something. So, you know, if she was to go with it or against it or whatever, if 4 happened to pop up in that moment of uncertainty, she got her answer. And she says periodically she updates her Facebook page, you know, with things just to keep his spirit alive. She says that I already spoke about this, but she says that Lael accepted the death young, but she still wondered like how and when would it hit her later. And she says that again, she can't be sad about death, but she acknowledges and is thankful for what she got out of it because it has lent itself to who she is today. And that wraps it up. That's the end of chapter 12. So I wanted to, I did highlight something on page 266. Yeah, because I have it highlighted here. Oh, okay. I highlighted this because this is important to me because this is sort of me. So she said, and as is now my habit, I took lots of pictures to capture the precious moment in time, because she was talking about her 44th birthday. They all went to Malibu, and I believe it was at her home that, you know, she recently lost in the fire, but they went to her home and she took pictures. Spent the day loving and being loved, reliving her loss in gratitude instead of sorrow, living her life urgently with confidence, and knowing that whatever the future brings, she is more than a survivor. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to highlight that because that's kind of me. Like I started channeling my grief in creative outlets. So this is where the content creation came up. And I document everything. I make a reel out of everything in my life. And I share it because you never know who you inspire. You never know. In fact, that's actually how the opportunity that I'm a part of now stumbled across my lap because, you know, people see me. They see me pushing forward. They see me sharing my fitness journey. They see the life that I'm living with my daughter and they get inspired by that. I've had girls come to me and say, you know, I went back to school, or, you know, I've lost 15 pounds, or I got one friend that, you know, she's building the strength within her because she had to leave the father of her children after being with him for 12 years, but he's, you know, abusive to her and she has found strength in leaving him. So you never know who you can impact, you know, when you share your life and when you appreciate your life. You know, it's all right. So I was going to read the acknowledgments. I think I'll do a separate video on that because I've already gone into an hour. But I wanted to show you the pictures if I can. So all right, so in this one, this is of her giving herself the shots while she was pregnant with Lael. This is the photo of her and Peter taking Lael to school, and when he got sick, he wanted to make sure they snapped that. That's her and Peter's wedding. That is Lael and Peter and her together. If you look close, I think that is the car that actually drove by them and almost, you know, hit her when she had that panic attack. The license plate reads Pete. They're holding each other's hand. And where is this? Oh, what was this one for? I don't know. I don't think that one had any meaning, but I think there were other pictures. Is that the only one that had a picture? Oh yeah, that was it. All right, yeah, that was it. Yes. So what'd you think? What did you think? I myself, like I said, I'm so grateful that she came on my radar because, like I mentioned before, when you share, you never know who you can inspire. And Bozoma coming on my radar, showing up the way that she did, she has inspired me. I know God has something great for me because just like her, I do understand that you go through things for a reason. And, you know, I'm finding strength in it every day, and gratitude and just hope and just a different outlook on life behind that tragedy. I caution you to do the same. Please don't sit in negative emotions behind suffering. We're not absolved from it. You know, you can find resilience. Find resilience in suffering. You'd be surprised how much stronger you may even come out of suffering. So if we can learn anything from Ms. Bozoma, is to do that. Is to still have gratitude and still have that strength and keep going, and remember to live life urgently. All right. I hope you enjoyed my recaps. This one went a little longer, as you can see, you know, because it had 2 chapters that to me were very heavy and kind of wrapped everything up. But on that note, I'm gonna end it here. I'll do the acknowledgments in a separate video. It'll be a lot shorter, but I appreciate you for going with me on this journey and reviewing her book, and I hope you have a fabulous day or evening. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and show your girl some love. All right, get me out here on this algorithm. All right, peace and blessings. Bye.